Okay, I have decided to dedicate one slide to the topic of float and double. These two data types are often confusing to newbies in programming. Let me try to dissect it and make it clearer to understand. The precision of a floating point value indicates how many digits the value can have after the decimal point. Float data types typically would have a maximum of 6 or 7 decimal digits, while double data types have about 15 digits. Therefore, it is safer to use double for most calculations, with exception of when handling money. If the application is for handling money, then decimal variables is mainly used. As such, they have higher precision and are usually used when a higher degree of accuracy is required. On the other hand, float is mostly used in graphic libraries because of its high demands for processing powers and also used in situations that can endure rounding errors. Okay, here we are in Video Studio, an empty program with just the console.write line method there. So we want to print out the values for a float and for double. Right. So here we go. I would have a number there. I'll just say double. So that's the data type for double. Double is called, so I'm just going to say number one, right? And I will assign a value to it. I'll say 19.45. Now, because it's a double, you will want to have a D there, okay? I know this isn't compulsory, but it's just good practice to have double D when you declare a double variable. Okay, now let's declare a variable for float. So when you declare a variable for float, you have a float. They have the float word there, and I'll just give it a variable called num2 equal to, I'm gonna just say 5.75 for instance, and I must add an F to it when I'm creating a float. That's what distinguishes it, okay? So just for the first time, we're gonna print it, and we're gonna print these values here. So I'm just gonna copy it, number one. I print that there, and then we'll just create a second one. Let's just see what it prints. Create a second one there, and I'll print num2. Num2. Okay, now let's see how it looks like here. Here we go. So those are the values printed there now. It is impossible to add a double to a float or multiply it or carry out some sort of calculation or manipulation except we do some sort of conversion, okay? So that leads us to the subject of casting. Okay, so let's look at C# typecasting. Converting one data type into another is known as typecasting or type conversion. For example, if you want to store a long value into a simple integer, then you can typecast long to int. Another example would be converting an integer to a string or float to a double. Note that there are two types of typecasting in C#. The first one is implicit casting. This basically is automatically casted. It basically converts a smaller type to a larger type size. For example, character obviously is the smallest one. So you can convert a character or a char to int, or int to long, or float to double. On the other hand, the explicit casting is done manually. It's basically converting a larger type to a smaller type. So it's just like the reverse, from double to float, then from float to long, and int to character. Okay, so that's the difference. So let's take a look at a practical example in Visual Studio. All right, let's see how we can convert a float to a double. Remember, a float is smaller than a double, and that makes it implicit type conversion, because with implicit type conversion, you only can convert a smaller data type to a larger data type. So what we have here as an example is a float that's assigned a variable called num1. And that's the value there, 5.75f, to indicate that it is a float. Then you have the double, which is given a num2 variable name. And I beg your pardon there, I made a mistake there, just quickly. Right, so, and we have the double given a variable name called num2, and that's the D that makes it a double. All right, so what we want to do is to convert this value here, which is a float, to a double. And the way we do that is to assign this value now, which is the float, to a variable called double, and you now give it a double data type. Okay, so this is a variable called n2. So this n2 is now the double, because we equated it to a variable that is a float. So automatically this is now a double. Okay, right, because we've assigned it a double type. Now let's print this out and see what we get. So obviously we're going to still get the num1, which is this one here, which is the float, and num2, it's a double, because we've assigned it a double type. So we've converted this value now to, which is n1, right? Sorry, num1, to a double. All right, let me preview it. All right, that's it there. You can see that even though we have just the same value here, so that would lead me to, how do we test it? How do we actually find out if this is a float and this is a double? Okay, but just to let you know that the system represents a double as a capital letter double, because it's coming from a class called double with a capital letter D. And for float is represented as single with a capital letter S, right? So we have a system class in C# that actually, we have a system class where float and double originates from. So when we try to see the actual value or the actual types of these numbers, we'll have to call the classes to find out exactly what data type do they belong to. So this is where we now introduce the system type called type. This brings us to the class called type. The type has the properties of the float and the double and some other data types. So let's call it out. It's a system class. So it's called type. All right. So type, we just give it the type a variable because we want to make use of it. So we are creating an object out of it. So I'm going to call it num1, because I actually want it to represent the num1 that we have there. So I'm going to say num1 dot, right? We want to get type. You can see that you can actually get the type. All right. That's the method, get a type. We want to find out what type it is. So I'm going to do the same to num type 2. Just copy and paste. So I'll give this one a different name. I'll call that type, TP num type 2. And here we are looking to get the type of num2 and type for num1. We're giving them this name. All right. So what do we print now? I guess we just need to print out this and that to find out the exact data type. So we're still going to leave this one here, but I'm just going to copy this. So we're going to have 4 stuff in the print line section. So I will print out num1. Let this be this, TP num1 and TP num2. So this could give us the data types, okay? And this will give us the data type of num1. Remember, because we're trying to get this one, and this one will give us the data type for this. All right. Okay, let's take a look at what we get. Yeah, that's it. So we can see it says system single. Remember, I said single is represented by the float, okay, and the double. These are the system class that they are inherited from. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be looking at is how do we add float and number or different data types in general. All right, we are going to be adding a float and a double type numbers together. Remember this part of my comment where I say you can only convert characters to integer, then long, and so on and so forth. This is the largest one, so it's from small to large. So what we want to do now is to add these numbers together. What we want to do now is to add these numbers together. The result will be a double. The reason why it's double is because we can only convert from float to double because float is smaller. All right, so here's what we do. So imagine that we want to add num1 plus num2. Right. Num1 plus num2. This is it. But of course, you know yourself, you need to give it a value, a data type. So the data type has to be double because double is bigger than float. So it will be double. Let's give it a variable name. I'm just going to say results. Right. So this works. So if we want to print now, we can now print out the result. So the result will be double instead of float. So I'm going to just quickly preview this. Here we go. So that's it. That's the result there now. So we are adding the values together and it worked. But the result is in double. How do I know it's double? Remember the way we checked it out the last time? Maybe we should try that again. So we invoked the type, type, the type, and we called it a name. Let me just say, just give it test. I don't know, let's call this test variable equal to, let's say we want to check the result. So we can say result dot get data type, that's get type, and okay, so maybe we want to we just print another version of it to see. We just print test, so this will give us the data type, and so it should be double. Let's try that again. Yes, that's double. You can see that now. So you can see the result is double. Now, just to test it, imagine, remember I said it has to be from float to double because float is smaller. So imagine the result here, we decide to give it a float variable. Sorry, a float data type, which is not supposed to be. But you see that it will not work. Okay, you see the error? Because you can see what it's saying, it cannot implicitly convert double to float. This is because double is bigger. Okay, so for automatic, for implicit type conversion, if you're adding two numbers together, the larger type should represent the results, not the lower type, as we can see. All right, so I'm going to change this back to double. Okay. So I hope this is clear enough, right? So I think the next thing we'll be looking at is this explicit type. That is where casting, we talk about casting the most. The explicit type conversion. See you soon.